when we're thinking about our multilingual learners, we want to start with the research. And we also want to consider all the different and unique needs that our multilingual learners have. So they have a lot of different factors like their first language proficiency, their current English proficiency, their level of background knowledge they have, and even the access to languages that they have at home. And there's so many of these that are out of our control. So today we'll focus on the ones that are within our control, and we'll think about those as their content-based needs, their linguistic needs, and their relational needs. So when we refer to content-based needs, I'm thinking of this as your students' ability to be successful in your class. How can they be successful in meeting the grade level objectives that you are setting for them? Secondly, we have their linguistic needs. How can we support them in their literacy goals in English? Reading and writing opportunities, speaking and listening opportunities to support their literacy. And thirdly, we have their relational needs. We want them to be confident. We want them to have a positive self identity. And we want them to love learning and feel like a strong part of their community that sees their experiences in the classroom. So today we'll be thinking about their content, linguistic, and relational needs as kind of different lenses through which we look at ways to use Newsela. Cool. And what kind of content is on Newsela to help you to that end? Well, we have a diverse library of texts that you can use to spark conversation with students. Those texts also represent a lot of your students' own experiences. We have our social and emotional learning content, so you can go there for different ways in which to talk and structure conversations about sensitive subjects. And all of these are standards aligned, vetted resources. So if you're not as familiar with Newsela, we have all of our nonfiction texts taken from over 175 different content providers, and we have those leveled into the 5 different reading levels so that you can decide different ways in which you'd like students to interact with that text. All right. I wonder, let's take an opportunity to get you reacclimated, reoriented to Newsela. So in a moment, I will ask you to, one, log on to Newsela, and then two, search for content. I'm going to type this in the chat too, related to your students' cultural experiences. So in a moment, I'll ask you to go to Newsela. You can do that by going to newsela.com, clicking login, clicking sign in with Clever, or alternatively, you could go to your Clever dashboard and click your Newsela icon. I made an demo account in case anyone has any issues. And then in the search bar, you can search for something reflective of your students' cultural experiences. Like I have some students in Northern California who have Ohlone indigenous ancestry. And so I can take a look at that and I can find, how about this one on indigenous food? Could be a good one. All right. Let's take about 4 minutes here for you all to use that search bar and try to find some articles that are reflective of your students' cultural experiences, and then I'll ask you to share. We'll come back together at 3:32 p.m. All right, everyone, let's come back together. What'd you find during this time?
Bless you.
Bless you.
So I
Thank you.
probably went like totally like left, but I thought of like my
Yeah.
students and our community of students here, they're huge on soccer. They love soccer, everything about
Yeah.
soccer. So I looked up different articles on
Yeah.
soccer. I found one in regards, the title's US Soccer Groups Project brings game to inner city kids in Chicago. So that's like something that
Mm,
I think would interest our students. Um, I was also looking, I was just curious, and this is kind of like not related, but
yeah.
for the Hispanic Heritage Month, I had
Yeah.
my students do yarn art. So I found a video on a tribe from Mexico
Mm,
called the Huichol. And
mm-hmm.
I didn't find anything on Newsela, but when I
Ooh.
typed that in, A bunch of other articles popped up in regards
Mm.
to indigenous tribes. So I found that interesting.
Oh, amazing. Okay, thanks so much for sharing that
Yeah,
as a blank spot. I'll be sure to share
of
that
course.
with my team to make sure that they do. We did have a lot of
Thank you.
research, of course, Hispanic Heritage Month just
I
ended
did
that
see
we
that.
yeah, we had that, but it's
A lot.
important that Hispanic and Indigenous representation exists in that. So I'm glad you saw that, and I'll report that to make sure we get that rectified. Thanks for
Awesome. Thank
sharing,
you.
Evelyn. Yeah. What else did everyone find?
So I looked up two things. One, a big issue I think everybody's aware of is like the immigration things that are
Mm,
happening now. And so I just put in a search like Mexican American immigrants. And I found an article, Mexicans in the Making of America, the immigration policy. Um, just there were all kinds of really wonderful articles. I don't even, yep, that first one in the corner
yeah.
I thought looked really interesting that I might dig deeper into. And so I thought that would be interesting to explore because it's really something that's at the heart of a lot of families right now. And then I took it in another direction. We're doing a unit in our language arts of facing fear and taking risks. And so
Mm.
I just put in taking risks and to see what I would come up with. And another author that we've been studying is Gary Soto. And
Oh,
something that came up was Taking Sides by Gary Soto. It was um a
novel
set.
study.
But what I
Yeah.
liked, I found this article that said the positive side of social influence. You
Mm.
scroll down, I don't know. Right there,
There.
right yeah. And I thought that might be something I would want to explore more because I've been talking to my students about we think that risky behavior is always like considered bad and dangerous, but
Mm.
sometimes taking risks means that you're trying out for a sport that you were afraid to do, or
Yeah.
like sometimes our friends can influence us in positive ways too. So I kind of took two different
Yeah.
directions in my search.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. What a great way to frame that for students to see positive risk taking. We always hear how, social media is negative, but what about socialization and can be helpful to us. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, we
Amazing.
just read a book of a story, Gary the Dreamer by Gary Soto.
Nice.
I
So in
love
my third
him.
grade classroom.
He's such a fantastic author, so hilarious.
Yes. And the students relate to his stories. So yeah, that was the one we just read last week. But on so for Newsela, there were articles for Dia de los Muertos.
Mm.
They even had extension activities also, like they could decorate a sugar skull.
Oh, cool. Amazing. I love everything that's seasonal to bring, the classroom out of the vacuum and into students' lives.
Right?
Amazing. Yeah, you'll notice
Yeah.
some of these are articles and some of these are text sets. And if they're a text set, they have multiple resources and they might have some guides of how to incorporate this as well as an extension, just like you said. Cool. Thanks, Becky. Great.
Yes, thanks, Becky, because I'm gonna do my altar this weekend, and so now I'm gonna be able to. I'm like, oh, I have to look for a book, because I don't have it. Like I said, I'm barely coming back into the classroom, and I'm
Hmm.
lacking so much. So most of my time searching was just logging in, because
Oh
I
gosh,
hadn't
good.
logged in, and I had to do all the questions before I could
Oh
get in.
gosh.
So I'm
Yes.
really appreciative of everybody's conversations and what they found, so that now I know better for next time.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'm reminded of so many things from what you said too. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring them up at this time. If you go to content library, you should see social emotional learning here. And it reminded me of what Melinda was saying about talking about choices and risk taking. And you can take a look at the middle or elementary school one, and they have lessons by topic like self awareness, self management, social awareness, relationship building, responsible decision making, and each of these has instructional guidance on how you can incorporate these. Having fun without trophies, for example. And then here's a lesson spark on how you can incorporate that in your classroom with some graphic organizers that are hyperlinked here. So I would encourage you to check out that content library, social emotional learning, if you're looking for something in the vein of what Melinda was saying and talking to your students about that. And then also for more seasonal work, if you go into each of your collections here, ELA, Social Studies, and Science, you'll see what's featured here. You can help students write a scary story. And we should have one on Dia de los Muertos here. Maybe it's coming up as October comes, but you can also search here. We have Diwali, resources for
I
Halloween.
saw a lot of resources when I was just browsing about writing for like scary stories.
Oh, great. Awesome. Fantastic. So you can check here. And then in social studies, you can look at different historical links to Hispanic Heritage Month. And then This Week in History, Louisiana Purchase, Dark History, Salem Witch Trials. That could be interesting for some sixth graders. Elementary Erie History on Zombies. We have actually here an elementary, where is that? We have elementary history collection here. Yeah, it's all within here. I think it's in our social studies collections. And if I search here, here it is, Elementary Spotlight Collection. And here we have Day of the Dead with that lesson guide, the first Thanksgiving. I'm going to put this on your agenda too, so you can find it really easily here, because obviously I forgot where it lived too. But I'll put it here in terms of elementary history collection. All righty, well, how wonderful was that? Thank you all so much for sharing. Let's continue and talk about some strategies to support our students' content-based needs. So we refer to that as helping our multilingual learners be successful in our grade level standards. How are they successful in your class? So one thing that you can do is a strategy is supplementing. So if you're teaching, Evelyn in science, something about how the ozone layer or the environment, maybe you could supplement and include a graphic for students so that they can see, in addition to having a text-based article, to learn about a scientific concept. So you can supplement. You can think about replacing. We have all of our primary sources in 5 different reading levels, because even my 11th graders reading the Declaration of Independence in ye old English, they really were not only disengaged from it, but really reached a wall where they couldn't understand the pillars of it. So I would have them read it. One, they could read it in Spanish if they wanted to, or they could read it in a 3rd grade level. And that is one way that you can replace a text to support them, similar to how you all have chosen to do that. I'll bring you in on something super new. If you haven't used Newsela in a little bit, I'll put in Declaration of Independence here, because we know that Spanish is not the only language that your students speak. And for a while, Spanish was the only language that Newsela had 20% of its articles in. So you'll find that some of your articles will have an English button where it's available in English or in Spanish at 5 different reading levels, which is great because that can support our students in accessing this text. But only 20% of our articles have that. And these are special because we call it trans-created, because it's not necessarily translated, but our team of native Spanish speakers have gone into these and made choices within the text to determine it at different lexile levels. But what we have that's new now is a translation feature. Oh, it's not available on anything from the public domain here, but if I put in any article here, like this one on robot rabbits, Most all of them are available to be translated into one of 42 languages just based on our relationship with the publication provider. So the Associated Press has allowed us to use our AI generated translate button. So when you click this and you scroll down, now you'll notice that there's a translate button next to every paragraph. If I click this, translate to, and choose one of 42 languages, we have an AI generated translation available. Now, world language teachers would tell us that this is not like the best practice for translations. It should be done by a native speaker, but as a crutch to allow students to have access, I think it could be a really good tool. So you can note that just below the image, there's this translate button that you could use to that end. Great. Any questions on that?
I don't have any questions on that, but I was looking at our agenda and I was just
Yeah,
wondering if there's possibility. It doesn't look like it's on the agenda, but since we're kind of new to the school year, if we
yeah,
could kind of be refreshed on accountability. I know that we can assign articles and
yeah.
see their results from the assigned articles, but if they're going in and reading on their own, would we be able to touch base on like how to monitor what students are doing in Newsela
Yeah,
as an
absolutely.
accountability piece?
There's a few ways that you can do that. So one, you can click assign on any article or text set, and then you can make a few choices here. Now, I had, some 12th graders that I taught, and if I put this at the maximum level and locked it, now they wouldn't be able to read it at the second grade level and take the quiz at the second grade level because I wanted them to do it at a higher level. So that's one thing that you want to be clear of. So if you have students you're opening it up, they can read it at any level that they want. That means they can also take the quiz at the end at the grade level that they're reading it on. So for an accountability measure, one thing to hedge against that might be to ask students to only read it at one level if you're assigning them at one level, so that you can guarantee that they are taking the quiz at that level. That's one thing.
So one of the activities that I would like to do with my small groups is we generally have like a text in class that we're reading, or I'll assign them a short reader. And then one of the things I want to ask them to do is find an article in Newsela that you can make a connection with what we've already been doing in class, but letting
Yeah.
them do something on their own. How
Yes.
would we monitor and hold them accountable for something that they're self-selecting? That's not necessarily an assignment.
Yeah, I like that. And um, is the fear in terms of accountability that students will find something inappropriate?
Not necessarily inappropriate, but I don't know when the last time you worked with sixth graders was.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just making sure they're actually going in, that they actually read an article, that
Mm,
they actually like just in terms of monitoring that they're doing what they're saying they're going to do without
yeah.
necessarily assigning them a paper pencil worksheet to go along with it, or
Yeah.
will they be able to take the Newsela quiz if it's not an article that I assign, or
Yeah.
like how would that work when they're self-selecting articles? How could I just
Great question.
monitor what they're doing?
Right. You can do that by going into reports and classroom data. And hopefully this will work because I am in a demo account. But you'll be able to see your students, all of the articles that they've interacted with. So I wish I
Okay.
could open this up to see the articles my students have interacted with. Let me try to show you from maybe the student point of view. That
And
might
do
be a
they
good way
have
to do it.
quizzes? Will they get the quiz if it's not assigned? Will they have all of the activities with the article, even if it's not assigned to them?
Yes. So I can show you what that looks like. So one way that we do that is we can assign multiple articles. So for example, I like to use Newsela for research like you do, Melinda, in terms of you can ask students to search on it and, find something relevant. You can also give them a repository of sources and give them the choice within that to even more put up the guardrails of, hey, you're not ready for Google right now. You can use the Newsela search engine totally, but what about if you read 3 of the 5 articles here and start with that as choice? And I bring that up because it is a parallel in terms of being able to see how students interact with that without having assigned a particular article to them. So let me show you what that looks like. You can create an assignment out of this text set. I can decide if I want the levels locked or not. I want it for a whole class, 4th grade, and I can say, read 3 of the 6 articles and complete the quiz for the ones you do. And I'll assign it. And then when I look at my assignments, and here it just came up here, but I'll show you how I found it. Here are my assignments. And now I'm able to see, I can view which of my students interacted with the King Tides article, which of my students interacted with the Newsela article, or I can look at it by student and see Valerie interacted with this article, this article, this article. Here's how she did on this. Here's how she did on that. So that is one way that you can look at that when you assign a text set. You also can see that when you are drilling down to the student reports of what they have interacted with. Let's talk a little bit about, we were talking about different ways, strategies to support students, our multilingual learners, in being successful in your class. We said you can supplement with maps, infographics, videos that we have. You could replace texts to have them at different reading levels or different languages to support students. You can pre-teach or reteach concepts as well with some different collections that we have. Here's our pre-teach and reteaching ones here. Well, you can do that by using our search filter really strategically here. For example, if you want to reteach a skill on, let's see, corroboration for students when you have 2 different articles and you want to say, how they overlap and how they differ, you might look at this one to help students evaluating corroborating primary sources. Here you could look at, you can search for a video if you are talking about climate change and you want to make sure that all students are up to the same level of background knowledge on climate change. You can use a video, or maybe someone was absent that day. And many of our videos, not all of them, are chunked with these comprehension questions at different points in the text as well. So when students reach a certain point, they'll be prompted to answer a comprehension question, kind of like Edpuzzle. Cool. So we can supplement, replace, pre-teach, and reteach concepts by finding the right content. So let's take some more time for you all to do that. Let's take about 10 minutes here to find content, and then I'd love for you to share which of the strategies you might use for it. So, maybe Evelyn saying, I'm teaching the science concept. I went into the science collection here, and I was able to find a science video that can help me, reteach this. So I'd love to take this time for you all to explore and find content and think about how you might use it to support your multilingual learners. If you go into, we call them curriculum complements. It's basically Newsela content that's mapped onto the scope and sequence of whatever curricula you use. And so that way you can have more resources and resources that come at 5 different reading levels to help you. So what might you use for ELA? We have Benchmark, we have HMH, Wonders.
We use Wonders.
You guys have Wonders, right?
Wonders.
Yes, we have Wonders, and for science we have TCI.
Oh, great. I'll put the Wonders curriculum here. That looks like it's K through 5. McGraw-Hill Wonders. You can go to 5th grade and see each of your units with a text set that complements it. It has some scaffolds to support your multilingual learners in vocabulary, responding to the text, etc. And then if you go to science and you go to curriculum complements, let's see, this one is also TCI. It's alphabetical by 4, so it's 4. We don't have TCI for science. So that one we don't have there. But we do have it for your wonders in ELA and your TCI in social studies.
I
Amazing.
think also, Annie, in the
Yeah.
content library,
Mm-hmm.
there's an option that says promoted at your district. I think you all
Amazing.
should be able to see that. Look and see, because mine sometimes has more options. I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
when you go to promoted at your district, you should see all the adopted curriculum
Amazing.
complements. I've plugged in what our adoptions are so that those are there for you.
Mine says your district has not yet identified
Oh,
new
I
health
just said
research.
that for you, Melinda, because I wanted to make it harder for you. No, I don't know why. I don't know why it would be saying that.
I know. Look,
Does anyone else have it when you click? You don't have to prove it, I know. You're
I
lying.
don't
Does anyone
have it
else have it
either.
showing?
No,
Huh,
I don't
okay,
have it either.
I'm gonna look into that on Monday, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, let me know how that goes. Liz, CC me and your CSM on
Yeah,
that. Okay,
and
great.
Montage, I will.
Yes. Amazing. Well, thanks for bringing that up. We want this to be as useful as possible. And yeah, that's what I had thought we could use that time for. I wonder, what did you find during this time and how might you use it with your multilingual learners?
I found content. I'm reading for ELD. We're doing Saving Salila's Turtle, and it's about engineering and
Oh,
just talking about the water cycle. I had to go way back, and so I looked up all
yes.
kinds of different, like there's so many articles on everything. But the first time I looked on the engineering process, and then I was like,
Mm.
oh, this is way too hard. And then I did the drop down and I went to the lowest level, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just like exactly what I need. So thank you
Oh,
for that.
perfect.
I'm like, because for ELD, we switch classes and I'm just stuck. There's really no curriculum. So we kind of have to
Mm.
come up with it.
Oh,
So
geez.
I'm like,
Yeah.
this is going to be my lifesaver for ELD. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so glad I'm here.
Oh, great. I'm glad you're here too. Amazing. I'm so glad you're
Yeah.
able to find that. Cool. What else did people find?
So I've never used the worksheets feature. Actually, I didn't even know that Newsela had worksheets.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking at them and there are so many graphic organizers.
Yeah.
So like the I see, I think, I wonder, we do that a lot in science. So that chart, the
Mm.
Venn diagrams, there's the timelines, just a bunch of different very helpful tools that can be used. So I like that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can search for graphic organizer here and you can find all of our graphic organizers that exist. And I'm so glad that you use the I see, I think, I wonder. I think that's a great, intro to scientific process too. And I know that it's there. I don't know why you're doing this to me. I know that it's here. Oh my goodness, it's messing with me right now. But if you do that, you should find your graphic organizer. And if you're not, just let me know. Cool. Thanks for sharing that, Evelyn.
Larson, we identified one of our goals this year is to focus on vocabulary. So
Hmm.
I just typed in vocabulary, and they have strategies like word maps where like the kids can type it. We like put a word in the middle of the bubble, and then they identify a word to go with the word.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. You found great things on vocabulary. Yeah, I can show some in ELA, and I think if we go to, oh, here we have some on videos, some skills and concepts could be good in terms of, grammar. This could be really good. What is a prefix? How to write questions? What does ly mean? How to write a sentence? And even for some things like figurative language, right? That is so abstract. And sometimes we need something like a multimodal input to support us in that. So I think these can be really helpful, as Lee was saying, in ELD in terms of providing these different options. Thanks, Becky. All right. Well, I'm so glad it seems that there are a lot of really useful things that you have found during this time that you'll use really strategically. in terms of content. And then I also want to think about different tools that we can use. So we'll transition now, not from your students' content-based needs, not their success in your grade level skills, but in their English language development, in their linguistic needs. So we'll focus on vocabulary, annotations, and writing. So having spaces to write and think as a means of developing their literacy and linguistic skills. So how can we support vocabulary? This is kind of jumping off of what Becky was saying. One thing we can do is not only do we have collections that help students in terms of developing vocabulary and graphic organizers to do that, but we have something called power words, and we have also some tier 3 AI generated vocab words to support students in that. So whenever you are on Newsela and you see an article that has a lightning bolt next to it, that means that the students are going to be asked questions at the end of it about the vocabulary in it. So I'll show you what that looks like. So it has these power words here. If you view this, it's going to ask students to define words in context. So you'll get data on how your students are doing in terms of certain words. Those words are underlined in green here. I'll show you. You see some in blue. I'll get to those in a second. But there are words highlighted in green. And when students click them, they get a student-friendly definition and how to pronounce it aloud for them, which you can't hear because it's in my headphones, but you take my word for it that it says it out loud for them. So not only are students able to be a little bit more autonomous in terms of, okay, I can understand what this word is. Maybe my teacher's going to ask me to listen to them all first before I read them aloud as a class. So you can use that for our power words. And you can also search for, anything like climate change, but you want to make sure that students are asked about vocab words throughout it. Then you can find an article on climate change that also has power words. You'll also notice that all of our articles have words that are underlined in blue on them. And those are discipline-specific vocabulary words that have the student pronunciation and friendly definition available, and these are AI generated. So notice that instead of tier 2 words that come up in text, not necessarily conversation, in green, we have the tier 3 discipline specific ones. So a great way and activity for students to read through it, and they can take note of all the words underlined in blue in their glossary in terms of, our unit vocabulary on climate change. So we have things built in here to support students in their vocabulary acquisition. Cool. And we can also make annotations on the text to help students engage in texts that are a little bit harder. There's more and more of the science of reading that is saying that sometimes we over scaffold, and students, I read a statistic that said 60% of student work is not at grade level, so that sometimes we're surprised when we give them grade level assessments and they're having trouble with it. So how can we get students exposed to grade level text but not leave them stranded without, a life raft? Well, one way you can do that is you can input your teacher voice into it by using annotations. So as you are scrolling down into the article, you can highlight and let go, and you can make a connection to a discussion you had in class. You can add background information to support students. You can even add a time for them to process this information. Turn and talk to your partner, and you can say, summarize this article so far. So lots of ways in which you can put your teacher voice into it to help them be successful in some of our harder texts that they are using. So that is one way we can use annotations. They also provide some visual cues that kind of chunk up the text and ask students to not be passive readers, but to think about what the article is saying. One way you can also ask students to be more active readers is by turning on this new tool we have called Checks for Understanding. These are on most all of our articles, and if you scroll down, you'll notice that if you view it as a student, students cannot read on until they answer a comprehension question, which I really like at times for my students who are really fast readers, right? Evelyn was saying she had that student who worked for 5 minutes on something. What did she take away? Well, you can kind of hedge that a little bit in terms of prompting them to answer a comprehension question. So I will, click this. And I also have this small win of, yes, I'm on the right track right now, and I have been paying attention. Or, ooh, I got that wrong. Maybe I need to slow down or ask a question about this. So that's one way you can ask students to be a little bit more active readers, is by using the checks for understanding here. Awesome. And we also have our write prompt to give students the opportunity to share share what's in their brain in writing. And that can be a real challenge for a lot of students. And writing can be a hard way for them to share what they've taken away. But what you can do is you can customize the write prompt to really set your students up for success. So if I say support your answer with evidence from the article, my students are just going to put a quote there. But I can be really specific and say respond in 5 to 7 sentences. I can provide some sentence starters to help my students, frame what they know. I can provide a word bank to ask them to incorporate academic vocabulary in their response. And I can even ask students to do their own annotations. So I might say to them, like, highlight the main idea in blue. And maybe this is an annotation protocol that you use across subjects. And you can highlight supporting evidence in green. And then students can use this color coding to start to recognize these different concepts across contexts. I can call this main. Oh, this is supporting evidence. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do want to say something I really like. With the writing prompts, I like that it gives you options. Because
Yes.
when you click on the writing prompt, sometimes you're like, yeah, my kids
No.
are not
Yeah.
at that level yet. So it's
Yeah.
super cool that you have options down below, and you can click refresh and then you get another option. So that's really nice. I really like that feature.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. I like it too. Yeah, Melinda.
This might be a question for Liz. I was just thinking about, like you were saying, like some of these questions might be hard for our students to write about, but I've been really loving Screencastify Submit for having students orally share with
Oh,
me
nice.
about what they're reading. So the question I have is, if I do a Screencastify Submit assignment, is there, like, are they able to share their Newsela tab so that if there was like a writing prompt that they didn't feel comfortable writing about, they could share orally through Screencastify? Like, it could be an oral response.
I think that's a great idea, and you could edit the write prompt to add to the prompt. If you want to make a Screencastify video, you can. And then they could put the link. You don't even have to use submit. They could just put the link to that video instead of entering text in the write prompt, because they have the Screencastify extension up in their Chrome bar.
Oh, like we
And they
do, that
can,
little arrow? Oh,
and they can choose. I do it all the time when I make my videos. Present the tab with your little selfie video in the bottom corner. So you just present a tab, and then they can present the Newsela article, scroll through it and explain. And then
and
when
they
they
would be
save
able
the
to,
article, it's going to
so
give them a
they're
link.
able to view the tab as they're scrolling through and explaining, and they can be viewing their writing prompt while they're explaining.
Yeah.
Ooh, all right. If you
Oh, I
guys
see
have
the
not
wheels are
used,
turning.
if you haven't used Screencastify Submit for your students, I would highly recommend it. You can have them read their library books to you and post it right to Google Classroom. And I'm thinking about connecting it now to Newsela articles that they've chosen, like post a video of you reading it out loud so that you know that it's at their right level. But I've been really loving that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Guys,
that's
this
so
is like
cool.
the best hour of my week. Thank you for this. This is so validating.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I've never used it, so I'm gonna look
I
into
am
that.
I
We
am
used it a
totally
lot
available
for
to help
COVID,
show
right?
you
Thank you,
anytime.
Liz.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
thank
good.
you.
That is awesome. I love all this sharing. Right, as teachers, too often we're reinventing the wheel. Why are we doing that? It's great to hear from one another, and thanks for sharing that. Cool. All right. Yeah, we talked about the right prompt. And one thing I'd be remiss in showing you here as we think about different ways to um, meet our students where they are and also push them in reasonable ways. We have something new called a lesson planner. And I think of this as a custom lesson spark, a custom way to create a lesson based on the article's content. So the world must do more to reduce global warming. Let's say I want to, have students look at this article through the lens of a certain standard, maybe an ELA standard, like referring to details and examples in a text. That's the one I'm working towards here, and you can search for your one here. But let's say you can tell Luna, our AI mascot, in this lesson, I want students, let's see what this is about again, to identify the ways in which action needs to be taken to fight global warming. That's a passive sentence, so let's see if they can do something with it. Include a project idea, include some supports for my multilingual learners, make it 45 minutes long. You can add up to 3 different standards here, and it'll provide instructions. It'll provide reading instructions that you could copy paste into the instructions here, some project ideas, and you can use this whole cloth or you can use it part and parcel of what works for you. I always like to have, kind of a start, and then I can make my own changes to it based on what I know my students might need. But here I can have the objectives. Students can identify and explain specific actions to fight global warming, referring to details and examples in the article. As you read, choose one color to highlight examples of actions and use another to highlight effects or consequences. So that's a great thing I can do, and I can put it right here. I have some activity ideas with some hyperlinked graphic organizers that I can use, and it tells me how I can use them. Oh, I'll get to that in a second. And then it has a lesson breakdown. What's the hook? What do you know about global warming? What are some actions you know about how you can fight it? A project idea, and then some sentence frames that you can throw right into your right prompt. This action is important because creating visuals or using visuals and encouraging partner work to support them in that. So it's something that you can use to get started, or that you can use in whole cloth. You can edit it as you see fit here as well. Similarly, we have another tool where we can generate some graphic organizers. While we can always search for graphic organizers, and you can see the ones that are kind of stagnant, you can print them out and have students use. These are stagnant, but they're also partially filled out in concert with the text of the article. So here you'll see 6 different graphic organizers that have the directions filled in, and they have some portion of it filled in as well. So you can think about this to help your students. Like I had a bunch of students for their IEPs, they needed graphic organizers with certain lessons and units. So it took a long time for me to find one that would work with it. And so using this could be helpful. And it's thinking really hard about that. Let me choose another one here and see if we can go even faster. I go into an article, I choose generate graph. Here we go. So here's what it comes up with: an anticipation guide, compare and contrast, context clues, a Freire vocabulary model, KWL chart. And I love this one on main idea. And I use it actually as a point of differentiation because I can edit this. I have some of my students come up with the main idea and supporting details, download that as a PDF. Then I'll have some of my students who need more support only fill out the supporting details. So there are lots of ways in which you can AI generate graphic organizers to, again, expedite the process of what you'd already be doing so that your time could be spent conferencing with students and families, for example. Any questions on the lesson planner or generating graphic organizers? All right. All right, let's take our final work block. Let's take 5 minutes to play around with some of the tools on the articles that you found to support students' linguistic needs. So thinking about how they might be using the vocabulary features, annotations, how you might use the right prompt. How often do we have some time to explore and discover? Let's think about that in concert with what you're teaching coming up. All right, everyone, let's come back together here. I wonder, what do you think will be most valuable to your multilingual learners? Some of the vocab supports, some of the annotation possibilities, or the right prompts, or something else?
I think all those features are very helpful for our students. Um, when we read an article together in class, I do make it a point to click on the vocabulary and we'll use the audio so we can hear it and then we'll all say it together. So I really like that feature.
Nice.
I have a question though. When I
Mhm.
pressed on the little headphones icon to listen,
Yes,
um,
yes.
it's super cool. I love that. And all of our students have earbuds, so they can use that feature. Um, is it only in English? Are there other language options? Just curious.
Great question. It's only in English unless that article is also available in Spanish.
Got it.
So if you
Okay.
see the English button here and it has Spanish as well, that means it's available in Spanish too. And now,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I see it.
However, the other languages, our read aloud function, is something that our team is working on, is getting the other languages read aloud. So right now, if it's in Spanish, yes, all the ones in English can be read aloud at different speeds.
Okay. And I do like the translate option. I've never tried that before today,
Mm.
prior to today. And so I clicked on a paragraph and I read it in Spanish and it was pretty right on, it was
Oh,
a
good.
really good translation. So
Oh, I'm happy to
yeah,
hear that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Great. Well, let's close out our time here. And I want to thank you so much for your time on this Friday afternoon. I couldn't have asked for a better group to be with to share strategies. And I'm just so in awe of you all coming here, developing your learning to meet your students as best you can and sharing strategies. I think I'm glad that you used this space in the best way that you could. I'll resurface our agenda, which has the McGraw-Hill Wonders. You know how to find all of our curriculum complements on our website to share with people who weren't here. I'll also put our recording here. Zoom will send it to me in a few hours, and then I will link it here, and I'll also email Liz with it as well. And you can go here for any Newsela support that you need. And you have my email at the bottom here as well if you ever need anything. I wonder, is there anything that I can elaborate on or show you again? Anything to help you feel more confident on Newsela outside of more time to tool around with what you found? Well, thank you all so much. If you found this session to be useful, we have a feedback survey here. I'm evaluated based on it. We want to hear about the ways in which this time can be best used for teachers like you all. But otherwise, I wish you a wonderful weekend. Thanks for being here, everyone. And best of luck in this month's instruction.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend and let me know if there's anything I can help with.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
You
All
too.
right. And Annie, thank you so much. You are obviously very knowledgeable of the way you were able to pivot and
Oh,
answer
thanks.
questions and give information.
Oh, I love it. Thanks for saying that.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.